Oh, come on, man. You can do better than that. Smack your goddamn daddy.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere, where we dive into TV shows and films that are published on Tubi. We'll explore the good, the bad, and find all the lessons in between. I'm your host, Manji, and for today's episode, we are going to be diving into Reginald Carter. Now, if you missed the previous episode, I do think you should go ahead and check it out. We covered Logic's film, Paradise Records. Now, Reginald Carter was created by Makiva and James, and they are my favorite Tubi couple. Their series, The Dirty D, I believe it's called, was the very first thing I watched on Tubi. So I've been wanting to review one of their films. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get into Reginald Carter. Now, this film is only about an hour and 15 minutes long, and it starts with Reginald. We meet him. He's look like he's getting ready for school and he's eating cereal with water. We see his mom. She looks a little disheveled. She's either very anxious, tweaked out, or stressed out. So in the next scene, we see Reginald's mom, Teresa, take him to school, and she needed to provide the school with Reginald's birth certificate. And the birth certificate is all scruffed up, and she hands it over to the principal, and they clear Reginald for his first day. So they take Reginald to one of his classes, and immediately the kids started roasting them, unfortunately, and they started clowning him, saying that he was funky. They saying he was missing socks. But Miss Wilson, the instructor or teacher, put an end to all of that very quickly. So once school's out, Reginald heads home and he finds his mom getting ready to leave. She has like a backpack. And so he asked her, like, where are you going? And she's like, I'm going to go get right. So now we know that it's drugs. That's the reason why she's looking the way she is. And she made a promise to go get cleaned and basically go get help with her addiction problem. So she's going to have to leave Reginald alone for a bit while she go take care of that. Now, Reginald, he looks like he's about in high school. I feel like I would guess about 16, 17, but he looks a little bit like autistic, maybe a little just like slow learner, or he wasn't nurtured enough so he could develop, the necessary skills that you need as you become an adult. She leaves, and so he just goes and gets his cereal and water.
I need you to just stay here and go to school. You got cereal, you got everything. I just need a minute, okay?
Ma, you can't leave me here by myself.
Baby, I'm sorry.
And she's like, yeah, you got cereal. Like, that's all this boy is going to need. And he eats his cereal, and the next day he goes to school. So the mom did tell him to continue to go to school. So at least he listened there. So in class the next day, Miss Wilson is having all the students read aloud. And now it's time for Reginald to do that. And he just didn't read. Like, she called upon him a couple of times and he just didn't say anything. She even made him come and sit next to him, maybe to like comfort him a little bit because the students started to make fun of him. And one of the students, Jamal, he kind of just jumps in and starts reading the paragraph that Miss Wilson instructed Reginald to read. So once class was dismissed, Miss Wilson told Reginald to stay behind, and she was like, why you didn't read when I asked you to? And he was saying that he has trouble reading and he knew the kids was going to make fun of him and he wanted to avoid that. So she dismissed him as well and ended up calling his mom probably to figure out how to get him into tutoring or something. And the phone was disconnected because we know the mom is not there. So Miss Wilson took it upon herself to go visit Reginald and get to the bottom of what's going on in his home because she said he's been wearing the same clothes since the first day of school. Now, it's not really clear on how long ago the first day of school was, but he's been wearing the same clothes, and of course he's been funky. So she pulls up on him and learns that he's been there alone and that his mom left him because she's on drugs and she's went out basically to get help. Miss Wilson, she took a look around and she noticed that he's been surviving off cereal and water and just the condition of the home. Eventually she invites him to her home for the night and give him a place so he can shower, get him some clean clothes so he could be prepared for school the next day. Now, when Miss Wilson and Reginald make it back to Miss Wilson, also known as Monica, home, we meet her quite husband. And so off top, he's concerned, and low-key rightfully so. Like, this teacher, his wife, who's a teacher, brought home a student, and so he reminds her that she can get in big trouble. She could lose her job, and she also could be charged with kidnapping if Reginald's mom come looking for him. But she's like, I believe God told me to do this. God put me in his life to help him. And he's like, okay. But Miss Wilson was a little bit extra. Like, once they made it back to her house, she made Reginald undress while she undressed and wrapped in a towel and went and got in the shower. I mean, granted, okay, you don't know what was in that house, but I feel like that was just that wasn't necessary. Now, Miss Wilson was so committed to helping Reginald that the next day she was going to take off work just so she can take him shopping and get him some necessities. That was going to look crazy. Like both the teacher and the student's going to be missing and they're going to be out shopping. Like Miss Wilson was not thinking properly, but Dave, her husband, was like, you know what? I actually have the day off. How about I take him shopping and get him the necessities while you take your ass to work, girl? What the fuck you talking about? So now the day after shopping, when it's time for both Reginald and Miss Wilson to return to school, they carpool. And so as they walk into the school together, we see a fellow teacher witness it. And she's like peeking out of the windows and she's concerned, rightfully so, because a lot of teachers have been getting out of hand. So I high key respect her for reacting the way she did. And so she also went to Miss Wilson directly and was like, hey, like I seen you with Reginald coming into the school. And then she's like, oh, Miss Wilson, she's like, I seen Reginald walking and I just gave him a ride. And she's like, all right, like, that looks a little bit weird. So at the end of the day, we see both Reginald and Miss Wilson walking to the car and getting in the same vehicle. And at that point, that same teacher from earlier spotted them again, but this time it looks like she was taking video and photos of them. Eventually, we see the same woman who took videos and photos of both Reginald and Miss Wilson telling another staff member how she's going to report them because there's literally no reason why a teacher and a student should be getting in the same vehicle and leaving the campus together. And shortly after that conversation, Miss Wilson, she's in her vehicle and she gets a call from the principal. Now, this call was crazy unprofessional, but the principal gave it to her straight and she's like, you need to come in and get your things. And basically, you no longer work here and you know exactly why. Like, I think you need to be a little bit more clear. Also, there's probably need some like sort of documentation on this and maybe, try to maybe understand what's going on, maybe ask her rather than just going based off hearsay and just flat out firing her. So the principal was super unprofessional, but long story short, Miss Wilson got fired and she no longer works at that school. Thankfully, Reginald was able to make a friend from that school, and that was Jamal, the kid who jumped in to read when he didn't. And so we see them walking down the alley and they're just like, joking around, being friends. And then Jamal, he like goes in a cut because I think he had to like use the restroom or something. And while Reginald is waiting for Jamal, a few other classmates, the main one who has low-key been bullying Reginald, pops up and they low-key jumped him. And they was like, let's see if Miss Wilson can protect you now. And so I think it was like three kids and they're punching Reginald. And so thankfully Jamal comes back and he jumps in to help. He had a little firearm with him. So he pulls it out. And of course the boys run away. And, Reginald thanks him for helping him. And at first I was a little hesitant about Jamal because at first I was like, this low-key looked like a setup because how convenient it was for these guys to show up once Jamal left. But, time told that Jamal is actually a solid dude. Now, after Reginald got beat up, him and Jamal went back to Miss Wilson's place, and Miss Wilson freaked out. She was concerned. And the first thing she did was call the school to get Reginald's lesson plan because she's going to homeschool him. And eventually the school obliged because, she was saying how she was concerned for his safety, rightfully so. Those kids who beat him up are literally in the same class. But it doesn't make sense for the school to agree. Not, one, you guys just fired Miss Wilson because you seen her out with a child and now she's asking for that same child's lesson plan so she can homeschool him. That doesn't make sense. And then also like she's not his legal guardian. I understand that Reginald parent, is not able to take care of him. However, there were some skips or some steps that were skipped and then they just automatically gave this woman his lesson plan. So now Miss Wilson is homeschooling Reginald and Jamal's there too. And he's like, I want to be homeschooled too. And Miss Wilson's like, okay, well, ask your grandpa because Jamal made it clear that it's only his grandpa. His grandpa's the one who's taking care of him, and his grandpa is the only family that he has left. Next scene, we see Miss Wilson homeschooling Jamal and Reginald. So I guess Jamal's granddad said, yeah. And now we see in Jamal and Reginald getting closer as friends, and they're like playing basketball. And while they've been hanging out, Jamal has always kept that thing on him. So Reginald eventually asked him and was like, why are you carrying that? And Jamal was straight up. He was like, I actually don't want to, but where I live, I gotta stay dangerous and I'm not about to get caught slipping. So, I understand that. Now, one of these times, Jamal and Reginald, they are hanging at Miss Wilson's place, and Jamal got real comfortable, so he put the fire on the bed so he didn't have to keep it on his body. And at this point, Dave, who's Miss Wilson's white husband, came in and seen the gun, and he immediately was like, "Get out, Jamal, and never come back again. Stay away from Reginald." And of course, Reginald tried to, like, have Jamal's back, but Dave wasn't with it. Now, the thing that was confusing to me is that when Jamal was leaving, he was like, "Bye, Miss Wilson." And she was confused and like, "Why is he leaving? What's going on?" And Dave was like, he had to go back home for his granddad or something. Like, why did he lie to his wife, and just why he didn't just say the reason why he told Jamal to leave? Like, I don't understand that part. Reginald's birth mother finally shows up, and she's at Miss Wilson's door banging, asking to see Reginald and to take him back home. But now, Miss Wilson, she's already shown how overprotective she is of Reginald, and she was not with it. She also seen that Teresa, his mother, was still out of it, still looking disheveled. So she's like, "You are not in the right space to be taking care of Reginald right now." So she eventually just like closed the door on his mom. And then we see Reginald, and he hears that his mom is at the door and he wants to see her. But Miss Wilson was like, "Not right now, when the time is right," which I thought that was a little bit crazy. Also, just because of Reginald's age. Like, Miss Wilson is treating this kid like he is like 5 years old when he is clearly near adulthood. I mean, granted, he definitely needed assistance, but the way she's handling this, I feel like was a little bit extreme. She should have let that boy see his mom, and then he could have seen that she was disheveled and, probably made his own decision. Lo and behold, the police show up and they arrest Monica for kidnapping. Go figure. Now, Reginald is back home with his mom, and his mom has a new friend. And this friend is basically going to be providing housing for Reginald and Teresa moving forward. Reginald was inquiring about school, like asking, like, is he going to still be able to go to the same school? And Henry, who is the dude that's dating Teresa now, is like, "Fuck school." He's like, "You ain't going to school. You're going to be working for me." And, Reginald's like, "What?" Like, "No, I want to go to school. Like, I'm finally learning how to read better. Like, I need to learn." He's like, "Nah, you're gonna be making money with me." And eventually Reginald was like, "Working doing what?" And he pulls out some dope. He wants basically Reginald to move work for him, the same work that Reginald's mother is addicted to. So this is not a great situation for Reginald nor his mother Teresa.
Miss Wilson been homeschooling me. My grades are really good, and I actually understand the subject now. As long as you stay in my house, ain't no need for school. It's the money right here.
So now we already in court. Like I said, there's no clear timeline in this movie. But now here's a plot twist. Her white husband comes in to testify against Miss Wilson. Now everybody is confused because, like, what the fuck? And so since the opposing counsel didn't inform Miss Wilson's attorney, they had a little bit more time to prepare to cross-examine her now husband, who was taking a stand against her. So now this was a cool plot twist for me because I thought I had it figured out. I thought I knew what was going to happen. I thought I could predict this movie, and there were a lot of twists and turns and just a lot of shit going on, a little bit too much, but I appreciate the fact that it was unpredictable. Now, Miss Wilson, she probably couldn't wait to get home, and when she did, she seen a letter from her husband on like one of her tables along with his wedding band. And in the letter, he's basically just apologizing and saying he got to do what he got to do. Now, her husband don't even look comfortable saying he got to do what he got to do, but they saying that's what he wrote in the letter. So after Jamal and Reginald was playing b-ball at the park or something, we see Henry eyeing both Reginald and Jamal from afar from his car. And then later on that night, Jamal is freaking out because he's like, Reginald didn't call to let me know he made it home safely, and he usually does. And Reginald is the type to make sure he will let you know he made it home. Like, he looked like the type that's, going to do what he says he's going to do. So eventually he calls Miss Wilson, seeing if she's heard from him. And now they're both freaking out. And eventually they pull up to Reginald's home. Now, once they made it to Reginald's crib, his mom was like, "No, I haven't heard from him. I actually already reported him to the police, but the police said he got to be missing for 48 hours." And honestly, she didn't show any type of concern for Reginald or any care to actually find him. And Jamal felt that way as well. So both Jamal and Miss Wilson took it upon themselves and started searching the park where he had last seen him, as well as putting up flyers automatically. It was crazy. They started going around at the park with nothing in hand because they just like went out to go do it after leaving his house. And then automatically in the same fits, they had like a stack full of flyers, and now they're going around people's houses and putting flyers up. crazy, like the way time works in this film. So the police eventually ended up pulling up on Miss Wilson and Jamal, and they were saying how they were getting some calls about disturbances and about them hanging up flyers in this area. The police reassured Miss Wilson that they opened up an investigation on Reginald, and eventually they're going to start looking for him. And Miss Wilson started like freaking out, telling some eventually like, we out here looking for him right now. Now you telling us to stop so y'all can do nothing. And but they have to follow the orders from the police, and both Miss Wilson and Jamal stopped. When Jamal and Miss Wilson made it back to Miss Wilson's crib, Jamal got a call from someone like the paramedic saying that his grandpa had just passed away. Now I know this film is not a comedy. However, when Jamal and Miss Wilson went to go see his granddad, like I like choked on the popcorn I was eating. I was enjoying some kettle corn. And I choked because they was wrong for putting granddad up there like that with his mouth open. And then how they was just like talking to this man while he's just dead with his mouth open in his chair, and they just talking like, man, he raised such a good young man. Like, what are we doing right now?
Push it to the middle. The man who raised an intelligent young man. Despite the environment, he taught you how to be loyal, a good friend. I mean, look at how hard you're going for Reginald out here.
And Miss Wilson, she loved the kids. So of course she's about to take on the responsibility of caring for Jamal because like he said earlier, granddad was the only family he had left. And he was scared because he didn't know what to do. And so she's like, I got you. Like, I'm your auntie. Like a little cute little joke because he told the police that she was his auntie. So that was really cute. So now Miss Wilson's attorney finally got the chance to speak with Dave to see what the fuck is going on. And so Dave made it seem like he was trying to stop Miss Wilson from housing Reginald, saying that, it was kidnapping or whatever. And then the attorney was like, well, why didn't you call the cops? He didn't have an answer. And then he also asked, like, why are you speaking up now? And again, he's like, I got to do what I have to do. Like, it looks like it hurts for him to say this. So eventually the attorney made it over to Miss Wilson's crib so he can relay the message. And he was definitely comforting for her, but it was at this moment where I realized he about to start plotting on Miss Wilson. And I understand. I understand. See, this part I predicted, but in the next scene, we see the police doing basically what Miss Wilson and Jamal was out there doing, and that's going around talking to people and searching for Reginald. And what a coinky dink. Henry just so happens to be in this area, and he's trying to act like, he's just a concerned citizen and asking the police what they're looking for. And then once they told him they're searching for Reginald, he was like, oh, like, ain't that the kid, like, who teacher kidnapped him? Who was Miss Wilson, who was the one who they spoke with earlier, searching for him. So now you got the police officer taking notes. And then in the next scene, we see those same police officers pressing Miss Wilson. And this scene was a little bit funny, too, because they were questioning her. And then the fucking attorney just like popped up from the passenger seat and was like, you got a warrant? He said some little, law words. And then the police just backed up. But I thought that was funny. And also, again, they look very comfortable. So we see the police, they're still out searching. And then one of them, they're just looking in this house window and they go, hold up, I see something moving. Oh, wait, that's Reginald. And then we see this white man bust out of the front door and running. And then we see some police officers tackle him. Now we are back in court and it's time for Dave to finally take the stand and we can finally hear what he has to say against Miss Wilson. And as he approached the stand, we see that he is in handcuffs. So it's safe to say that he was that white man that ran out of the house who had Reginald up in there. And once he got on the stand, he finally told the truth and just shared that Henry, Teresa's boyfriend, was the one who forced him to kidnap Reginald, because if he wouldn't kidnap Reginald, then he was going to kill him. He threatened him multiple times. And we see like a flashback of Henry basically pressing Dave and forcing him to kidnap Reginald. And we even see how Dave kidnapped Reginald, because Reginald, he's not a dumb kid and he's no longer living with Miss Wilson and them. And so when he approached Reginald and tried to be friendly, he was just like, hey, good to see you. See you later. Like, there was no reason for him to go with Dave. So Dave had to, I guess, do what he had to do. And he hit Reginald over the head with a brick and I guess dragged him to the car and then took him to some random house. So the whole reason why Henry even did all this was because Reginald's dad had something to do with the disappearance of his twin brother. So he's been watching Reginald and Teresa for the past 5 years, just plotting their demise. And so after Dave finished telling everything on the stand, Henry yells out, like, you bitch, I should have killed you a long time ago. And that was enough for him to get arrested while he's in court. Thankfully, Miss Wilson was found not guilty. And Dave wrote her another letter apologizing and giving her a house. Now that's my kind of apology, Dave. So this so Reginald So this movie ends with Miss Wilson getting ready to start her day. She goes downstairs and we see that she's caring for Reginald along with Jamal. And now her significant other is her attorney. And I thought it was so cute only because I know these two are a couple in real life. And I just feel like, homie is like, he gonna be with his girl in every lifetime in every film. And I know that's right. But let's get into the lessons here in Reginald Carter. First off, I appreciate how caring Miss Wilson is. However, I feel like a lot of things could have been avoided had she, used a little bit more consideration with her decisions. I understand that Reginald needed some help. Like when she pulled up on him, this kid was literally just eating cereal and water and he was there alone. However, she was treating it like he was like some 5-year-old kid. Again, he was in high school. She's a high school teacher. This kid looked like he's like 15 or 16. Not saying kids that are 15 or 16 should just be left to fend for themselves. However, considering the fact that, his mother is literally just out away temporarily and not like, dead or something. So we are expecting his mom to come back. So you can't just take this kid because he belongs to her. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's how we set up society. So if I was in Miss Wilson's position, I would have given Reginald the resources to care for himself while I figure out another plan. Maybe figure out how I could adopt him or figure out how he can become emancipated. And that way you don't even have to ask for permission. Like there are so many other avenues Miss Wilson could have taken besides just taking him home because he has a mom. And although his mom is unfit, she is still his responsibility and she can claim him. Like I know it sounds like he's property, but she can claim and get him back at any time because her child belongs to her. Like, that's just how it is. So with Miss Wilson, with her wanting to help again, if I was in her position, I would have went shopping first for some food and some cleaning supplies and some hygiene essentials and of course some clothing and got him all that so he won't be funky in school. He don't have to worry about kids messing up or sorry making fun of him because of his smell or because of the way he's dressed or for wearing the same clothes. And then I would of course start after school tutoring on the school campus so we can help him improve that reading because that was definitely a necessity. And we would have went from there. So Miss Wilson did this all wrong and everything that happened to her was predictable because if you just take someone's kid, although they have a parent that's a drug addict, 9 times out of 10 they're going to come back regardless of the reason. They're going to come back for the kid because although they on drugs, they are still a mother and that is still their child. Like, I guess the main lesson here is like be mindful when it comes to helping children. Yes, if you feel the need to help them, do that. However, if you find yourself in a situation like Miss Wilson where you find a child who needs a lot of attention, then you need to make sure you aren't breaking any laws so you don't end up in jail. You may not have a day that's ready to bail you out. I mean, but also the world is yours. And if you feel like that is the only way you can help this child immediately, like say that child is in danger and needs immediate help. So your only option is to move the way Miss Wilson was moving, then you have to understand and kind of anticipate some shit happening, like possibly getting arrested for kidnapping. But hey, you're doing this because you want to help that kid. So you just have to kind of deal with those consequences afterwards. Hopefully, y'all picking up what I'm putting down. But this was a pretty cool movie. And this is my first film by Makiba and James. So I look forward to seeing many more. And if you made it this far in the episode, that means you kind of fuck with your girl. So I think you should go ahead and give this podcast a follow, like it, share this episode with a friend. Next podcast episode, we are going to be covering Zoe Kravitz's Blink Twice. And I'm really excited about this because I love this film, but I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to see y'all next week.